A few years ago, my friend Mike and I were heading to a dinner party on a snowy Saturday evening in Denver. We decided to stop at a liquor store before heading to the party. Honestly, it was a pretty annoying detour with the snow coming down, but we didn't want to show up empty-handed. We picked out some local craft beers and a bottle of whiskey before making our way back to the car. I remember the snow starting to pick up around then, but it was nothing we weren't used to. Just as we were about to leave, Mike ran back into the liquor store to grab a pack of Ziwanis, his latest nicotine fixation. I remember being annoyed because I was the one driving, and my car wasn't great in the snow. After a few minutes, he emerged from the store and hopped in the car. I immediately pulled out of the parking lot, and we were back on our way to BY now. The snow was falling even heavier, covering the roads in a thick blanket of white. The drive to the party was supposed to be straightforward, about 20 to 30 minutes through familiar suburban neighborhoods. But things in my life are never as easy as they seem. The snowstorm had other plans, turning what was supposed to be a simple drive into a treacherous journey. Let me just say, I'm not a great driver to begin with, and my car slipping every 10 seconds didn't help. After a tense few minutes driving uphill, I turned a corner and was met with a sight no one ever wants to see. In the middle of the street sat a stopped car, its hazard lights flashing ominously, cutting through the falling snow like distress signals. Both the driver's and passenger's side doors were wide open. I was tempted to just drive around it and continue on my way, but Mike instructed me to stop. Judge me if you want, but I'm not your typical Good Samaritan. I've been through way too much in my life to trust strangers by default. I told Mike we were late, but he urged me to stop, his voice filled with concern. Mike had gotten me into trouble before with his childlike curiosity, but this felt different. Someone could actually be in danger. Reluctantly, I stopped the car, and the two of us sat in tense silence for a few seconds. Mike asked if we should check it out, to which I responded, "Isn't that what we're doing?" He rolled his eyes and told me that watching the car through the windshield wasn't going to accomplish anything. He had a point, but I really didn't want to get out of the car. I felt uneasy about the whole thing that I asked him if we could just wait a few more minutes. He reluctantly agreed, and we sat there, watching the eerie blinking of the hazards against what was otherwise a beautiful snowy backdrop. Nothing happened, which honestly surprised me. Eventually, Mike said he'd had enough and was going to investigate. Before I could stop him, he stepped out of the car and I watched with rising apprehension as he approached the vehicle. As he did, I could have sworn I saw something dark move out of the corner of my eye. Maybe my worried mind was playing tricks on me, but the situation was feeling worse and worse with each passing second. Not even 10 seconds later, I thought I saw the car jolt, like something had moved in the trunk or back seat. Again, maybe it was my imagination, but I didn't care. I made a split-second decision and slammed on the horn, startling Mike, who had been inspecting the inside of the vehicle. He immediately understood what I was trying to communicate and sprinted back to the car that I floored it. As we sped off, I told him my suspicion, that the whole thing had been a trap. He was annoyed when I admitted I didn't have any actual proof, but I responded firmly. I wasn't about to risk my life for someone who could easily call for help. The rest of the drive was tense. Mike was the type to hold a grudge longer than most. We finally arrived at the dinner party, and everything felt normal again. We spent several hours catching up with old friends, drinking and laughing. Mike and I had almost completely forgotten what had happened earlier, until our host turned on the TV to check the latest update on the snowstorm. He flicked over to the local news, and what I saw was horrifying. The police were reporting a stolen vehicle that had been jacked just 2 hours earlier. The news anchor read out a spoken account from the victim. A woman had been driving her teenage son home from a friend's house when they came across a stopped car in the middle of the road, its hazards flashing, doors open. Concerned, they approached to see if anyone needed help. Just as they did, 2 men sprang out from behind a snowbank, while another emerged from the trunk of the vehicle. They held the woman at gunpoint, forced her to hand over her keys, and then sped off in her car, taking the one they had used in the trap with them. I turned to Mike, my face pale with fear. That could have been us. We told the rest of the party what had happened earlier, and it instantly put a damper on the atmosphere. Still, people were hanging on to every word of the story. The worst part about this whole experience? It's made me even more distrusting of strangers than I already was. I often wonder how many people I might have helped in a time of need if I hadn't almost fallen into such a well-planned trap.